Welcome back to Book Break. We're here today with a brand new original book tag. This is the New Kind of Summer book tag. So everyone's summers are looking a little bit different this year, maybe than the ones we'd planned. So I thought it'd be fun with this book tag to use our books to construct our perfect summer. We're going to travel around a bit, go on those summer holidays we might have wanted to go on, travel through time a bit as well, or just go on a staycation. So the first challenge is to recommend a book set in the country where you currently are. And for an extra challenge, see how close to exactly where you are you can find a book from, and I think I've done pretty well in this. So I am currently at home on the Isle of Wight, and I found a book not just set on the Isle of Wight but actually set in the town where I live, and that is called The Bed I Made by Lucy Whitehouse. And this book was brilliant. I loved it. This is a thriller, really scary stuff. It's about a woman who moves to the Isle of Wight to escape from an abusive relationship. So we see her starting her new life here. We also get flashbacks to see what she's escaping from, and we see the man that she has run away from slowly tracking her down. So it's really scary stuff. It's a brilliant page-turning thriller. Challenge number 2 is to recommend a book from a different area of the country that you're in. So for this one, I've picked My Cousin Rachel by Daphne du Maurier. This book is set in Cornwall, which is a lovely part of England I would so love to visit right now. It's about a young man who meets the wife of his beloved, much older cousin who's recently died, and he suspects that the new wife was responsible for this murder. But when he meets his cousin's widow, Rachel, he becomes completely enchanted by her, but still not entirely sure whether or not she can be trusted. So it's this really dark book. It's a lot of fun. I loved it. Challenge number 3 is to recommend a book that reminds you of summers when you were young. And so for this one, I had to pick The Secret Garden by Frances Hodgson Burnett. Now, I was not raised on the Yorkshire moors, so it's not nostalgic for that reason, but I was actually brought up right next to the house where Frances Hodgson Burnett herself lived, and it actually had a secret garden in the back of it that you could go and visit. So it's nostalgic for that reason, but also just it's a book I remember reading and rereading when I was younger, constantly playing games where I imagined discovering a secret garden of my own, and I'm sure a lot of people had similar over-imaginative childhoods and will find this book really nostalgic for them as well. For challenge number 4, I want you to recommend a book from a country you visited before. And I have just finished reading Saint X by Alexis Shaitkin, which is this brilliant literary thriller, partly set on a fictional Caribbean island called Saint X. So obviously I've never visited this fictional island, but I have been lucky enough to visit the Caribbean, which was an amazing holiday, and so I loved revisiting it through this book. And the book itself is fantastic. It's about a young woman called Claire, who many years earlier, while she was on this holiday with her family when she was only about 7, her older sister went missing and was found dead. And 2 men from the island were suspects in the murder, but there wasn't enough evidence, and so they were let go. And we catch up with her years later, about 20 years later, when she, by chance, in New York, has an encounter with one of the men that she remembers was a suspect in her sister's murder. And so she becomes pretty obsessive about getting to know him and trying to piece together what happened on that night, but also trying to piece together her memories of her older sister and who she really was. So it's this really deep character study of these various people, and I absolutely loved it. My 5th challenge is to recommend a book from a country that you would love to visit next, and a country I've always wanted to visit is Iceland, so I'm going to recommend the book Burial Rites by Hannah Kent. So this book is based on a true story of a young woman who was accused of a murder, and so she's sent to this really isolated farm in Iceland to await her execution. And so the really stark landscape of Iceland is this really strong presence in the book. She finds herself totally isolated, surrounded by people who are suspicious of her, and that builds up this really tense atmosphere. And finally, challenge number 6 is to recommend the book set the furthest away from where you are now that you can find. And you can't get much further away from England than New Zealand, and so for this one I've picked the book Colour Scheme by Ngaio Marsh. Now this is a book I haven't read, but it sounds fantastic. Ngaio Marsh wrote a ton of crime novels. This one is actually the 12th book in her Inspector Allain series, but so many people say that this is her best book. She even herself thinks it's her most well written, so I think that's where I'm going to start with her. And this is a murder mystery about a man called Maurice Questing who was murdered in this really horrible way, and he had a lot of enemies. So it's up to Inspector Allain to narrow down who of the many people who might have had reason to kill him actually committed this murder. So I would love to see your guys' answers to these questions. Do leave a comment below if you do this tag, and we will watch them and add them all to this playlist we've got of our tag videos, which you can browse through here to have a look. See you next time!